Hi, my name is Barbie Enrico, and I'm here to welcome you to Pitch Tips Zoomcast, and where venture capitalist Fred Haney gives feedback to CEOs of startup companies to help them raise capital. Fred is an experienced venture capital fund manager, angel investor, entrepreneur, founder Monday Club, and author of The Fundable Startup, one of the best-selling books about startup companies getting funded. So let's find out what Fred has to say to today's CEO.
Hi, and welcome to the Pitch Tips Zoomcast program, where we work with a budding entrepreneur and a venture capitalist, that would be me, and let you be a fly on the wall and see the interaction as the entrepreneur presents his business plan. Our purpose here is to help the entrepreneur improve his pitch deck, improve his message, and hopefully improve his chances of getting funded. I'm Fred Haney. I'm doing this because I've been involved down through the years with hundreds of startups as a venture capital fund manager, an angel investor, a co-founder of half a dozen companies myself, and before all that, a number of years working with high-tech startups within larger companies like Xerox and TRW. We're here today with Tooraj Helmi, who is the CEO of Apsy. Tooraj, welcome. Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're going to have a good time and go through your pitch and hopefully help you tighten up the message a little bit. So audience, you can imagine yourself as a fly on the wall in the office of a venture capitalist who's listening to a pitch from the CEO of a startup company. And the whole idea here is to let you get a feeling for the dynamic. So you can see the presentation, but you can also see the kinds of questions that I ask and the kinds of issues I'm concerned with. And in this case, I'm really trying to provide advice, not funding, but advice to Tooraj to help him with his pitch. So Tooraj, why don't you give us a 1-minute version of what your company Apsy is about?
Sure, sure. I'll go through that. Thank you everybody for listening to me. So all of us know building apps is complex. Using existing option, the best one can do is go through the hassle of learning and then building, and at the end they can just build a cookie cutter app themselves using the so-called low-code platforms. As a team with more than 40 years of experience, we have a disruptive approach. I'm Tooraj, MBA and PhD from USC, ex-senior vice president of engineering and YC alumni. I'm also the founder of Apsy, an LA-based Techstar-backed startup. We have been creating the first true AI SaaS to generate apps based on user verbal explanation. Using our approach, instead of asking user, go ahead and do it yourself, we ask them just explain it, and our AI does the rest. The result is an elegant custom app matching their unique business model and taste at the fraction of cost and time. Our high quality and incredibly low prices has helped us grow quickly and globally with half a million since we launched last year. Our $100 billion market consists of a startup as SMBs who are kind of turning to us from the best of local platforms like Bubble. And we are currently raising our seed round with half of it committed, including investors like Tecos Angels.
Great. I think one of the challenges you have, just because of your subject matter here, is AI is a mystery to people. You know, people don't understand it, don't know what it is, don't know how it works. So as we go here, I think we're going to work hard at trying to find ways to make it more concrete. You know, I'm not sure I have the answers to do that, but maybe we can tease it out of you.
I try my best to see if I can make it simpler, but sure, I agree with you.
So let's just talk about what you just said for a minute. So you have a way of using artificial intelligence to build apps. Mm-hmm. Apps for what? I mean, for mobile phone or any computer?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's for mobile phone or websites. So using our technology, we support like apps at the complexity of, say, somebody wants to build something like Uber app or Airbnb. So our AI can handle that level of complexity.
And that sounds like an impossible thing to do. What's the magic that allows you to do that?
So it goes like I spent at least 3 years of my life in my research at my PhD, and it was my subject matter was machine programming, which is leveraging AI to understand verbal explanation of users and turn that into code. And the challenge is there as we speak, we just speak freely, but when it comes to code and application, it should follow a specific grammar. So that was one thing that I kind of tackled throughout my research. But another level of complexity is apps is not just like a line of program or paragraph of program. It's like different screens that have to work together and be connected together. So what we have invented at Apsy is a way of create a specific models of different apps that we can kind of explain any type of app. And then using the NLP, like natural language processing, when the user talks, we are able to figure out pieces of information that then we can use to customize those apps so that we can generate the apps for them.
That's a good explanation. I mean, I like that. I think you may want to incorporate something like that in your pitch. So does the user have to speak a certain language? If I'm using Apsy to create an app, do I have to speak a certain language or say certain things and not say other things?
It's in the first version, we support English, so it should be speaking English. Probably down the road, we are going to be supporting other languages as well. But as far as like how you are going to be talking, you just speak your own language, right? And the agent is capable of understanding most of it. If it doesn't understand, it's going to ask you to repeat yourself. There are cases that it might fall to a case that it doesn't understand, but it's going to take note of, and you are going to continue. And maybe at the end, it's going to like list a few features that these are the things that are still open, and we try to fix those for you.
One other suggestion I have for your short pitch there is that not everybody understands SaaS. So you probably ought to incorporate an explanation of what SaaS is. So why don't you take a second here and explain what SaaS is and why it's important in your situation?
For software as a service, which means that we create something, we put it on running somewhere, and then at that point, it's capable of doing everything on its own. So it's human is kind of out of the loop. The customers come in, they use that service, and they are capable of doing everything, and the system is going to support them. And then once they are done, it's done. Normally, the monetization is subscription based. However, it could be pay-per-use as well. So they use the system, they do whatever they want to do, they get the outcome, and then kind of the owner of the SaaS receive the benefits.
So there's one system on the planet. I mean, obviously there could be more than one, but there's basically one system running your software, and your users connect to that system to do their programming. So they don't have, there aren't millions of copies of your system floating around out there. There's one, presumably because it's a big complicated.
Yes. So yeah, it's on the cloud. So I wanted to say cloud, but I thought maybe like some people might might not know what cloud is, but let's assume that everybody does. Yeah, there is one replica of the system running on the cloud, and that's serving all of our users. So users just log into a website, they do whatever they want to do, and they don't need to install anything or anything like that. They can do everything, and then they get the outcome, like you said.
Yeah. Okay. Before you do your screen share, I just want to make the point that when investors listen to a pitch like this, they have a mental frame of mind that may seem a little negative. I mean, I try not to let that show too much, but here's, I want to explain the thought process. When I first got into the venture capital business, my tendency was to get excited about every project I saw and dig in, do lots of due diligence, get very enthusiastic. And then I found out that there isn't enough time for that. because I had 50 business plans on my desk, 50 people trying to schedule meetings, 50 people trying to call me on the telephone. I mean, I just really had to manage my time minute by minute. And all VCs are essentially the same. So what VCs learn pretty fast is if they're going to say no to a project, they want to say no fast. You know, our motto within my venture capital fund, the one that I managed, was what you want to do is spend none of your time on the deals where you're going to say no and spend all your time on the yeses.
That makes sense.
So what most VCs do as they go through a presentation is they're kind of making a list of concerns, potential issues, showstoppers, you know, things that they're concerned might cause this deal to not succeed. And then if they decide to do a due diligence process, it's a matter of going through that list and try either get comfortable or find a way around an issue or finding a way to deal with it or decide, well, I can live with it. And if you can't, if there's just too many so that they can't live with it, then that's the deal they decide not to do. So just understand that's kind of the thought process here. And what you want to do is
it's not on the positive things. They are looking at negative things. So,
well,
I wasn't looking.
They're looking at reasons that the company might fail. I mean, every company has a gazillion positive things about it.
Sure. Yeah.
But from a venture capitalist point of view, the issue is not so much what's wonderful about it as, you know, is it going to end up on the successful side of my portfolio or on the failure side of my portfolio?
Okay, so it's important to minimize those things that might come as a negative thing.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I want to do. Okay, got it.
So let's see, with that, if you're ready, why don't you do a screen share and we'll go through your pitch deck.
Sure, let me share my screen. All right. Let me get rid of this Zoom thing, which can always come on top of my slides. And can you see my screen?
Yep. Good.
All right, so I'm presenting Apsy. We are building the first true AI SaaS to build elegant, affordable custom apps. And we are backed by...
I would explain what you mean by SaaS right off the bat, because not everybody's going to understand.
Okay. And by SaaS, we mean that we are having our kind of software running on the cloud, and our users are going to log into your service, build their apps, and that's it. As easy as that. They do not need to install anything, and piece of cake from that sense. And we are backed by investors like Techstars, Sunstone, and Tecos Angels. So the problem we are trying to solve is that there is a lack of decent custom app builder.
Yeah, I think I'm going to comment slide by slide as we go here, Tooraj. The question that raises is, well, then why do you need my money?
Mm-hmm.
If you got all these guys backing you, you probably need to qualify that a little bit. I mean, they're obviously haven't given you all the funding you want right now.
Yeah. So would I say so far, I'm raising 1.5 and I've raised half of it. So I'm still looking for the other half. So okay, I can say, yeah.
That's important.
Mm-hmm. So how would I phrase that though at this point? So I'm backed by these guys, which have provided half of my goal through my investment at this point. Does that sound good? Okay.
At least convey that idea. There may be better words, but that's the idea. You know, these guys have provided half the capital I'm looking for.
Sure. Okay. All right. So the problem we are trying to solve is the lack of decent custom app builders under 20K. The existing options are do it yourself or low code. With these type of apps, you can build cookie cutter apps yourself. There is building hassle involved, and people and users have to go through a learning curve. They have to learn how to use them. Of course, there are conventional dev shops. The problem with them, they're super expensive. The process is not transparent. It's slow, and there is very high risk that they won't deliver what they promise. So do you want to provide a comment before I move on?
No, I'll interrupt if I want to comment.
Perfect. So our solution is to remove the burden from the end user. As low code says, go ahead and do it yourself, and we are out of the loop. Our approach is different. We say, user just explains it, and our agent does everything. So it makes everything much easier. So
I think I do have a comment there if you go back. The phrase there, user just explains it and the agent does it, that encompasses an intergalactic amount of process. At some point, are you going to be a little more clear about what that means? Can you give me an example or help me have a better understanding of what happens inside that green box?
If normally not inside the pitch, which is like 5 minutes, and I don't have enough time to go more detailed. But after, if anybody asks, like, tell me more, how is it going to happen? Then I can definitely do that. But
well, maybe we could have that conversation then after you go through your slides.
Okay, sounds good.
But I think, well, let me comment here. One of the things that's really important about a pitch deck is the flow and the context. You know, the audience gets the slides one at a time, and each slide only means as much as the prior context that's been provided and the prior explanation. So if you say something like this and don't explain it to me, then I'm kind of left as we go through the rest of the slides, not being quite sure how this works or exactly what happens. Mm-hmm. It may be okay to, I'm not sure I would push all of that off to the back end. I think you want to be able to say something, whether it's a simple example. You emailed me a little example, that was pretty good. I think you want to be able to say something about how this really works, you know, make it as concrete as possible. Because again, I think one of your biggest challenges is that AI is this big sublime bubble that people don't really understand.
Mm-hmm. Sure, and another approach is also we can also include some, if there is enough time, there would be a demo. It could be a demo that shows like some a portion of it being done. So I can do that too.
Somehow you need to make it specific and concrete for the audience.
Concrete.
So
okay.
It's not just this big mystery bubble. Okay. They have a pretty good idea how it works. I mean, even if you just use like that example you gave me, just put down a couple bullets and say, here's an example of the kind of things a user might say that could then be turned into an app.
Okay, got it. Makes sense. I agree with you. Cool. All right, so the end result, we are kind of providing a better value prop. We are better because our apps are fully custom, scalable, and low effort. It's much faster. It takes weeks, not months, or maybe years at some points, and it's much cheaper. So it's kind of less than 20K instead of sometimes $500,000 to maybe more than $1 million.
And those are all good points. I think we don't need to take the time here. But the challenge that you'd have with the venture capitalist is, well, prove it. You know, how do we know that it's better? And not just is it better, but how much better is it than what's out there today? How do we know it's faster, and how much faster is it? How do we know it's cheaper, and how much? You've shown me how much cheaper, so that's okay. But when you make claims like that, you got to be able to defend them and quantify them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I guess I got that on faster and cheaper, but my better is a little bit not quantified there. That's what you're pointing to, right?
Yep.
Okay, got it. So how it works, our AI SaaS platform, we have created our AI SaaS platform to build custom apps. So everything that is involved in building apps, from defining to designing to even helping the user coming up with the funds, generating the code, publishing the app as a website or to app stores, and then continuously upgrading these apps are fully automated and handled by our platform. And we do have a provisional patent on our approach.
Good.
Okay. So it's a proven market. We've been generated at this point is $500,000. So I have to update that. it's a proven market with 400K in first year. We acquired 35 customers worldwide in 10 different countries.
Comment there would be, I think you've proven that you can get 400,000 in revenue, but I'm not sure you've proven that there's a big market there. That's sort of a different issue. Do we know how much is being spent today in app development?
So I do have it here. Actually, it's my next slide.
Yeah, you might reverse the order there.
Okay.
So again, so that I'm kind of zooming in. This provides sort of the big picture context. And I mean, having said that, I'd also say investors are always skeptical if you flash great big numbers at them. So it's okay to kind of zoom in and say, well, this is the big number, and then this smaller and the smaller. But what you want to get to is a definition of what's probably a pretty small market that you can dominate. So, I mean, these are all well and good, but I think you probably also want to tell me about the market for AI developed apps. You know, who else is doing that? Maybe nobody. You may be it. But what do we think that opportunity looks like? Because that's where you're playing.
Sure. At the same time, I was thinking to the end user, right? Whether they do it with that local platform or they do it with conventional dev shops, the outcome is an app, right? So now we are saying that we are going to do it faster, cheaper, and better for you. But again, if they go with other options, they are also going to go with get an app. So if I say AI-driven app, maybe it's cool, but to the end user, well, they might say, why would I care? I'm getting an app, right? So using AI definitely helps me to make the value proposition better for them. But at the end of the day, they are going to get an app. So should I try to compare myself with AI versus non-AI, or just say these are everybody who are building apps and we are doing the same thing, but we can build better apps compared to.
Well, it may be maybe a little semantic, but remember the essence of high-tech investing is people want to invest in companies that have sustainable, long-term, unfair, competitive advantage. So you need to be very clear about your sustainable, unfair, competitive advantage. You know, what is that? You could say, I mean, I guess you could say, well, that at a minimum, you need to say there's a segment of the market we can address or where we can offer a lot of advantage. You could define the market that way. I mean, you could say, you know, if you slice the market up into what's there, and here's a little segment where people are using AI. I understand your point. You know, it's,
yeah. So the point is that
like so much about how it's being done as just the result.
The result, yes. And so that caters startups basically. And here, when I come here, I say, while the entire market is $500 million, we've started focusing on the startups because our approach generates apps at the budget that they really can afford. But with other approaches, they really don't get a way of getting a high quality app. And that's where we are focusing on.
And your pitch to customers might be different than your pitch to investors.
Obviously.
You know, the customers might not care how you're doing it. If you can do it faster, better, cheaper, that's fine. I'm on. But investors are going to want to understand, we'll get to it later, I think, but they're going to want to understand the competitive dynamic here. What makes this a sustainable, fair competitive advantage, proprietary competitive advantage? Now, whether you segment the market that way or just say, look, we can capture that much of the market because we have this advantage. There's different ways you can say it, but for investors, it's going to be important to know how you're doing it and why you're able to capture some revenue take it away from the other guys.
Sure. So yeah, of course. I mean, in terms of how we want to how we can capture is because we are going to provide a better value proposition to our customers. And I'm going to talk later on that we do have customers who are coming to us from our competitors just exactly because our quality is better or our price point is better. And we do have those examples. But how we are going to sustain and make sure that we are going to be only a kind of player who does that because our technology is unique. It's based on my own PhD research. It doesn't exist out there. It's not something that it's not commodity that you can go and buy different pieces of it and put it together. It's specific. So, and we do have a patent, so that's going to make us unique in that sense.
I think that's all extremely valuable, and it's an important part of the story. But again, what you while your customers may not care how you're doing it, investors are going to be very concerned about how you're doing it and wanting to know that that's a sustainable competitive advantage.
Yeah, I agree.
So there are two different issues there. I would separate them.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right. So there is, if we compare us against competition, which are kind of low-code platform, all of them, we are the only one who can provide the least price, offer the least price to the customer. We are able to build both mobile and web application. All of them only focus on one or the other. And also our time to market is the least among all of our competitors.
This is probably a good way to address competition. I mean, I understand in a pitch situation like this, you only have so much time, but it's important to understand that the real question that's being asked by investors is not who are your competitors and which boxes do they check. The real question that's being asked is, what are the competitive dynamics within this industry? Who are the players? How does it work? How do people make buying decisions? Is it based on price? Is it based on turnaround time? Is it based on speed, other considerations? And who else might enter this market? How does it evolve over the next years? And what makes you think that you can fit into this market and compete? I mean, this is a pretty good summary of that, but you need to understand that there's a whole rich set of questions sort of behind this that a venture capitalist would want to dig into if they decide to have another meeting with you.
Sure, yes. And I know these other competitors pretty well. I've used all of them myself to make sure to understand how they work. So I can definitely address those concerns or questions and say how we are different than any of them and why users actually go with them versus go with us.
Good. Yeah, that's important.
Sure. In terms of our kind of sales channel, we are using different channels to get out to our customer. Everything from like digital marketing all the way to attending startup communities to sponsoring events, and that's how we've been able to find customer in the first year of operations.
Would it make sense to give a percentage for each of those, sort of break it down so that I know where your revenue has come from so far?
Yeah, I have the numbers. I can definitely include it in the slide. But if I just want to like give you a rough idea, majority of it on the first year has been on non-digital marketing. That's how we started. We started by going to different events that startup attended, sponsored the pitch competitions. It has been more physical. But starting 2022 January, we have started doing more digital marketing. So at this point, I would say 20% comes from digital, 80% comes from physical activities.
But do the physical activities, are they on this slide?
Yeah, like startup communities, direct outreach.
Oh, I see. Okay.
All of those.
Okay. Yeah.
But I can't like be more specific and provide a percentage for each of these things.
You know, I don't want to make the slide too busy, but it seems like it's important information. You know, where's it come from so far? How's it trending? Where do you focus your energy in the future?
Yeah, and yeah, of course, yeah, I can talk more. we are trending toward more digital marketing because like based for our goals for this year, physical was a very good approach, and we are at this point we are on track to get to our goal. But next year we want to have 10x number of users, and physical, as much as it is good, it's not going to be scalable to that point. So we are going very hard on digital marketing, and I hope that by end of the year, maybe 80-90% of our customers come through digital marketing, which is going to enable us to scale for the coming years.
You know, one way you could sort of convey that information without busying up the slide too much would be to use red, green, and yellow text.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
like showing that which one is more important at this point.
Yeah, like green for the ones that have been the greatest so far, yellow for something in the middle, and red for ones that haven't contributed much.
Or maybe I can put them on a timeline, like I can say for 2021 this, for 2022 that.
I think a timeline would be good. Yeah, I mean, the idea is, you know, what's the focus been in the past and what's the focus in the future?
Okay, yeah, I agree with you. So that would provide more information on how we are going about.
Just helps focus the message a little bit.
Okay.
But also it begins to answer an important question: what are you going to do with my money?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. You know, are you going to where presumably my money is going to go more toward the digital marketing piece.
Of course, yes, yeah.
But I think you want to make that clear.
Okay, sounds good. So we are a team with 40 years of combined experience. I myself, I do have a deep background in this area. I do have an MBA and PhD from USC, and this is my second experience as a startup founder. With the first one, I went to Y Combinator. I do have 3 other co-founders who are helping me along marketing, client success, and product development.
And the question, I think that's a good slide. The question that's being asked about your team, again, it's not who are the people and what jobs have they had. It's really, why is this the best group of people to build this company at this time? To any relevant experience you want to play up. I mean, you might want to say more, for example, about your experience with the other startup, the Y Combinator startup. What was your role there? What did you do? I mean, was it a unicorn? Did it crash and burn? It almost doesn't matter. I mean, what's more important is what was your experience? What was your role? What did you learn from that process? Okay.
I can talk about that. My concern is, though, I might run out of time if I want to include more information. No?
Yeah, and you don't need to burn up a bunch of time. You could consolidate it into a sentence or two, or again, you could say, well, I'll talk about that later.
Okay. But I was the CTO of that co-founder and CTO. So that was kind of in 2016, we went there, and that was kind of my first experience as a co-founder. I learned a lot of things, but one thing I learned is, like, startups, you should be thinking about so many different things. And one of them we were not thinking, which was kind of seasonality of the market. That was around kind of adding AI to kind of direct the decision on buying health insurance. And we went to YC in February. Nobody was buying health insurance at that point, no company. So we tried as much as we could, but unfortunately we couldn't find any customer who wanted to use our service.
Yeah, well, see that's valuable information. Again, when it comes to your team, I'll back up. If you've seen my book, The Fundable Startup, you know that it talks about the 2 things that make a startup company fundable. One is a fundable idea, and the other is a fundable management team.
Yes.
And you have to just always remember that when you go out and talk to investors, you are competing against other startups, some of which have pretty good ideas, and some of which have management teams that have been successful building companies before.
Mhm.
And if a VC has, a couple business plans with management teams that have done it before and been successful, he or she is likely to lean that direction. So you've got to just always remember that you're competing. You don't know exactly who the competition is, but the safe assumption is that there are some teams out there that have done it in the past and been pretty successful.
Maybe
you need to.
Yeah, maybe a better example, because I was senior vice president at PennyMac. I was running a team of more than 50 people. So in terms of execution, that would be probably a better example, because I can show that I have the capacity of running such a business.
Click. I just got a completely different impression of you as a CEO.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's really important information. It's about previous experience. I mean, if you read the Fundable Startup, you saw the case study about Lori Tooraj. I wrote that I thought Lori had a pretty good chance of being successful because of the kind of management experience. She hadn't been a CEO, but she understood the problem of hiring and firing and motivating people and managing and meeting objectives and all those things that management requires. And that's really important. And I wrote, I don't know, 2015 or 16, something like that, I thought she had a good shot at being successful. And I wrote that 6 years before she sold her company for over $100 million. So, I mean, it's a good story, and I got that one right. I don't get them all right. But the point is, you don't necessarily have to have, I mean, it's pretty hard to compress 20 years of CEO experience into a couple months. But any management experience that you have is invaluable, and that will have an impact on potential investors. Yeah, I would get that right up front.
Okay, got it. Yeah, my mind was, because this is a startup, YC is more people focusing on more, and my mind was there. But as you were explaining, I thought, well, this might be a better example, because it shows I'm capable of running a business up to that point. So this is kind of easy for me at this point. I
might spend more time on that aspect of your background and less time on the other people. Got it. All right, cool. Very good feedback. Thank you. We also have great advisors who have been helping us along the road. Normally, I don't talk more about this slide. So would you recommend telling more about that? No, investors don't invest in advisors. I mean, it's fine to have them there, but I wouldn't spend a lot of time. The one thing that does happen with advisors, investors are always a little skeptical. Especially if you put a bunch of luminaries up, famous people. The question is, well, are these guys really involved? How much time are they spending? What have they done for you lately? How are you compensating them? What was the last time you met with them? How often do you talk to them? Do you have meetings? It just raises all those kinds of questions. Yeah, but these folks really, I talk with them at least a month. Ramesh, I talk with him maybe every week. Paul, I talk with him maybe 2 weeks. Yeah, see, I might say that. Okay. These guys are really involved. They're really helping me. And like you just said, I talk to them every couple of weeks or something like that. Okay, cool. Sure. And I do have some demos. I'm going to skip from on them, two of those. So the business model is subscription-based. First, and we have different ways of making revenue number. First one is based on subscription on apps, and they are going to pay over 24 months to just pay the cost of their app. But beyond that, they are going to be paying if they have premium features. They're going to continue paying for those as long as they use the app. Plus, we do have support plans that supports them after their app goes live. That starts from $100 to $300 a month. In terms of our metrics, the lifetime value for a customer is $30K. The cost of acquisition is $1K, and at this point, our MRR is $15K, and we are expecting to reach out to $50K by end of the year. Okay.
Our projection shows that in a matter of 5 years, we are going to be a unicorn company, and the revenues are going to go like the ROI is going to go 10x, and the margin is going to be very healthy at 75%.
Let's see, where's the, okay, I see the revenue number. And we talked a little about defining the market and sort of the narrow market where that you intend to serve. Somehow that 204 million number needs to tie back into an understanding of how big the market is, and yes, the market's big enough to support that.
Yeah, it's kind of 10% of the market, basically.
Well, I'd be careful about that.
Mm-hmm.
Companies that have 10% market share don't usually do very well.
Okay.
It's the 20 and 30% players that are usually the most profitable. I mean, there's data about that.
Okay.
So when you tell me you're 10% market share, if you've got something really valuable, my guess is you haven't defined the market down narrowly enough.
Okay.
You know, try and define a market where you're 50%.
I see.
And again, it may be that segment of the market where AI is being used to make it faster, better, cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And you may own that segment. You may be 100% of that segment.
Mm.
But that's a different calculation than, oh, we're 10% of the market.
That's a very good point.
You might say we're 10% of the big overall market, but if you define narrowly, we're actually the only player. We're 100% or we're 50%. We don't know anybody else.
I wasn't. I didn't. This first time I'm thinking about that. You're right. So, and it did like it. Just another thing, because I do have a vision, and the vision is we are going to like capture 70% of the market by 2026. Somehow I wasn't even like looking at this and say, okay, how could that be that the number only shows 10% while I'm saying we want to capture 70% of the market?
You get to define the market.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you. So currently we are fundraising. We are raising 1.5 million using SAFE. Our valuation is 9 million. And at this point, we kind of invested, we received half of it invested and half of it is open for new investment.
Okay. Oh, let's see. Are you going to tell me about use of proceeds, how you're going to use the money?
Yeah, sure. It's coming. It's the slide after this one.
Okay.
So our existing strategy is going to be acquisition. So there are the big players like Microsoft, Google, and AWS. All of them are active in this market. They would potentially come after us. But recent activities in the market, Apsy was acquired by Google, another local platform, 2021. Also Bubble, which is kind of dominating the local platform at this point, raised 100 million last year. So the market is pretty hot for this type of startups. Good.
And I assume, I think you talked about them a little bit on your competitive sheet. I think they're both on there, right?
Yes. And this is what you were talking about, the use of funds. So in terms of use of funds, the majority of it is going to be on marketing, about 35%, and then around 20% on R&D, and the rest is going to be on administration and COGS.
I would try and make that a little more specific. You know, what the investors saying, well, what am I going to get for my money? Mm-hmm. So you might be a little more specific about each of those. I mean, R&D is pretty generic. They're all kind of generic. I mean, I think you want to convey to an investor specifically, what am I going to accomplish? What milestones am I going to satisfy? What are we going to look like after we spend this $1.5 million that's going to allow us to go raise the next round of funding?
So like on like sales and marketing, for example, you say, I'm going to spend this much on marketing, and that's going to like increase our customers by 5x or something like that. That's how we would normally say it.
Just as specific as possible, yeah.
Okay. And on R&D, do you go as far as like what exact products are going to be focusing on, or that's going to be too much?
Just a couple bullets to summarize, maybe one or two.
Okay, got it. Okay, at least on R&D.
Kind of raises the question of where does the system stand? I mean, is the system, you've got customers, so you've got something working. Is that 98% of the system or 50% of the system? You know, what needs to be done?
Okay, understood. Okay, sure. I'll try to add more information to this.
That's important from a risk point of view. I mean, investors want to know, well, how much product development risk am I taking?
I know they want to see least amount of R&D and most on sales and marketing. I know that, sure.
Right.
Yeah. And so just to answer it currently, so the last piece of our product, which is in terms of the platform, the last piece is the remaining piece, which is going to be done by end of October. So we hope that kind of our platform is going to be fully complete by October. Anything beyond that is going to be kind of enhancement next year. So even next year, I would say maybe the like sales and marketing would go to like 70-80% less on R&D.
Yeah.
And then some stories, like I said, now people are coming to us. People are coming to us from Bubble because they built an app and it only worked for them for a few months. People came to us from Google App Sheet. Same thing happened. The app that they built for them wasn't scalable. And we do get a lot of cases that people go with offshore development. They spend 100K or more, and then they come to us and we only do it at 10K for them. So,
you know, Tooraj, I would consider putting that slide real early.
Okay.
Right up front. I mean, that kind of helps define the problem you're solving.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if somebody said, well, right up front, well, what problem are you solving? Well, there's application development companies out there, but they don't really get the job done. I mean, they're inadequate, and here are the reasons why. And this is the problem we're really attacking.
I agree with you. I was just thinking, why is it here? But then I remember the reason I brought it here, because last slide I was talking about Bubble and AppSheet are doing so great and they are raised or acquired. But at the same time, we do have customers who are coming from these ones to us. So if they were successful, we should also be successful. Because that was the kind of rationale
I understand, but you could kind of flip it around. You could put this early. I think this really helps define the problem you're solving. Mm-hmm. And then when you get to the one about exits, you could say, well, remember, I told you about Bubble and AppSheet. In spite of the problems they're having, they still got this kind of an exit.
I see. Okay, yeah, that's a very good way.
I think it's a better logical flow.
Okay.
But I think this really helps to explain why you exist. You know, what problem you're solving. Why does the world need you?
Okay, got you. Okay. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much. We invite you to join our disruptive, scalable, and revenue startup. Let me know if you have any questions.
Good. Okay, why don't you take the screen share off? The couple things that I think would be good to talk about for a minute. One is and I think I said this in the email I sent you, just a general comment. Pitch decks have a lot of different uses. I mean, you know, you use it when you're standing up in front of some investors or in front of Tech Coast Angels and you're walking through your pitch deck and you're explaining everything. That's one scenario. But another one is you send it in email to someone like me to try and have a slot to present to Monday Club, or you send it to a venture capitalist and say, hey, take a look at my pitch deck. I'd like to have a meeting. And the pitch deck, I mean, ideally, if you sort of idealize those different uses, the pitch deck that you use to send to an investor through the email may need to be different than the one that you use when you're standing there explaining. Now, I've spent a lot of time dealing with this issue, and I actually think it's possible to build one pitch deck that sort of serves both purposes. But in the extreme, the pitch deck that you use when you're standing up and explaining doesn't have to have a lot of words, maybe a few bullets. It can have graphics and pictures because you're there to explain the graphics and pictures. But if you send that pitch deck to an investor and ask for a meeting, he's just going to throw his hands up in the air and say, well, this doesn't tell me anything. I mean, this doesn't have the content. So some companies are starting to think they need two pitch decks, one that's more explanatory, not necessarily like an old-fashioned business plan. It doesn't have to be 30 pages of prose. It can be slides with bullets and simple bullets, but it needs to have enough content to convey the information. Now, yours is pretty good that way. Yours has the content. The issue I would have with yours is I'm an old-fashioned guy and I like to print things out and then write notes on the slide. I'm not going to print out 30 slides with a black background because it's going to use up a whole toner cartridge on my printer.
And probably we won't be able to write on it.
So, and I won't be able to write on it. So I really don't like the white on black. I mean, I know there is a theory that white on black is more readable, but there's also a theory that black on white is more readable. So I'm not a big fan of light font on a dark or muddled background. So just a thought. But I think the point that maybe more to the point with your presentation is let's talk for a minute about how this works, and let's see if you can come up with a simple way to give me kind of a concrete understanding of how this works. Because after I go through your slides or I hear your presentation, my understanding of how it works is still just a bubble. I don't have a clue. You know, it's still the magic of AI. That's how it works. You know, just believe me, trust me, everything's going to be okay. I think it would really help if you can come to an example or a few sentences of some explanation about what's going on here. You know, how do I know this works? Why should I believe it works? Why does it work?
Sure. So a concrete example that like we've been kind of going past and back and forth. I go on a scenario. So the way it works is that you start as a user, you come on this one and just say a couple of sentences about what you have in mind. For example, you might come and say, I want to build a system. I want to build an app that allows the users to like sell their used items, but at the same time, they can pass it on to their friends. And if their friends buy them, then they are going to get a percentage of the proceeds. So that would be an app. Just imagine that. I don't think that it really doesn't exist. I just came up with that.
Well, that's kind of the example you gave me. I thought it was a good example, but right away it raises the question, well, how does your application know who their friends are? And,
yeah.
What product, what's being sold? I mean, where does it get its information?
So exactly. So what is important here is like what from just these few sentences, the system is going to know. We do have 150 different models for the app that we have defined them. Like this is an explanation of the social app. This is an explanation of an e-commerce app. This is an explanation of an educational app and so forth. So what the first thing we do, our system is going to try to map what the user explained to one of those one or more of those 150 models. So it's going to go there and say, well, based on what I heard, it's a combination of e-commerce plus social media. So it's going to take those out and say, now I know I have some frame of mind what I'm going to like be talking to the user. Once it does that, it also qualifies. It goes and asks some questions to make sure really is it e-commerce and is it social media. And once it knows it is both of those, then now it has all of the screens belonging and features belonging to e-commerce plus social media. Then it takes the user through customization phase. And in that sense, it goes through like each of the pages at a time and say like, let's take a look at like e-commerce page. What do you want to change here? And the user say, I don't want to like see it here. I want to see something else over there. And as the user is talking, it's going to make those customization. And the friends concept of the friends, for example, comes from the social media aspect of it because it's already part of the social media. It's just a matter of connecting these two models together.
Okay, that's a really good explanation. I like that. And I think the first part of that you could probably summarize pretty quickly. I mean, and it makes sense. You're telling me, look, if you took all the apps in the galaxy and sorted them out and classified and categorized them, there's 98% of them fall into 150 categories. So we've got a model for each of those categories. So our first job is to figure out, well, which category do we fall in? You know, do we have a sort of a pre-existing app that we can plug this into? And then we'll do some customizing.
By the way, Human does that too. If you come and tell me, I want to build an app and does this, the first thing I want to do, I want to, like, in my mind, I want to see like what type of app you are talking about.
Is it a store?
Exactly. So we are kind of replicating that by AI.
You could give some examples. I mean, store is a good example. That's one kind of app. A blog might be another kind of an app. A YouTube channel or might be another kind of an app.
Yeah, those are any of those that you mentioned is one of those 150 categories that I mentioned.
See, I like the conversation we're having. I think you need to do something to help users kind of get their arms around what's really going on here. You know, why should I believe this works? How does it work? I mean, if you could sort of consolidate that into one slide, I think that would be worth adding.
Sure.
Let's see, do you have specific issues or questions that I might be able to help you with? Or there's some challenges?
I mean, you taught me a lot of things. Thank you so much. Things I've been pitching a lot. So maybe I pitched this maybe 200, 300 times. I've got a lot of feedback, but several points that you brought up, I never heard from other people and made me thought. So I have some homework to do right after this call. I'm going to go through and see how I can address the points that you brought up.
Well, good. I mean, that's what I'm here to try and do.
Right. Thank you so much for that.
Tooraj, thank you for doing this. Thank you for putting up with my questions and comments. And audience, I hope you've enjoyed this and learned something from the process. Please subscribe if you haven't already to our YouTube channel, and come back. We put a new Pitch Tips program up every couple of weeks, and hope you'll come and watch next time. Tooraj, thank you very much, and good luck with your project. It's a fascinating project, and I hope it works well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Okay, thank you.